So we are super excited for you to join us on today's podcast with Aaron Wenzel. He is the founder and CEO of Brentwood MD, a concierge medicine practice in Nashville, Tennessee. Davin, what did you get out of this talk with Aaron that you're excited for our viewers and listeners to get today?
Just really inspiring to me was, keeping the main thing, right? And really understanding who you are and what you're about and sticking to that and not trying to spread yourself too thin.
I loved his comment about prioritizing excellence and curiosity, right? So you continue to figure out how to improve your business, but then you figure out how to make it the most excellent form of what it is and staying true to that. So I'm excited for you to join us today and look forward to any comments that you have. Just leave them in our comment section, and thank you for listening. Welcome to the Root Cause Business of Medicine podcast, where we explore what's broken in healthcare and what we can do about it. I'm Dr. Erik Lundquist, and I've been practicing functional medicine for the past 15 to 20 years. I'm excited to co-host this podcast with my brother, Dr. Davin Lundquist,
who's just beginning his journey into functional medicine. We come from different points on the path, but we do share a common goal. We want to rethink how medicine is practiced and help others do the same.
The U.S. healthcare system is in crisis, rising costs, declining outcomes, and physician burnout at an all-time high. But we found a different way, another way, a better way.
On this podcast, we dive into real stories from medical professionals who've stepped away from the traditional model, kind of like me, and have found a new purpose in integrative, functional, and alternative approaches to care.
These are authentic conversations with practitioners and friends who redefine success, not just for themselves, but for their patients and communities.
Whether you're a clinician feeling stuck, a student seeking direction, or just curious about what is possible,
you're in the right place. This is the Root Cause Business of Medicine podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Root Cause Business of Medicine podcast. And today we have our special guest, Aaron Wenzel, out of Nashville, Tennessee. Aaron, we won't ask you to sing today unless you want to, but
you don't want that.
But we're really excited to have Aaron on today. Aaron is an emergency room physician who has now gone into a very successful high-end concierge practice, and we're really excited and interested in learning about your path to getting to where you are. And so why don't we just start off by just kind of diving into your story. Like you and I know you and I have talked about this before in the past, but I think for the purposes of this podcast, just to really kind of give us the framework that got you, when you were working, and what started to form in your mind. What were the seeds that were planted that kind of started you thinking that maybe you wanted to shift a little bit in how you were practicing medicine?
Yeah, Erik, thanks. Actually, I'm classically trained as a family medicine. And I started moonlighting in the ER in my second year of residency, like a lot of family medicine residents do, especially in more rural communities. And in West Tennessee, outside of Memphis, there were a lot of rural communities that needed some help. I had a young family, and on a resident salary, I was motivated for economic reasons, to have a side hustle to speak of. Through my family medicine training, I became really disenchanted with the delivery of sick care. And it was this revelation that we really have sick care, not health care, that I kind of had this incredibly intense emotional experience, feeling like I had been duped. And, here I was being celebrated as a family medicine resident, chief resident, winning awards and being recognized. Meanwhile, my experience was that I could probably on one hand count off the number of patients I've made a meaningful demonstrable improvement in their health. My experience was everybody was getting sicker. Their diabetes was getting worse. Their obesity was getting worse. Like every disease was getting worse. I was just managing it well. And that kind of revelation led me to this place of, I'm not sure how this fits for me. I contemplated switching residencies to emergency medicine, switching residencies to a number of other fields. That didn't seem very practical at the time. And again, with the new family and the ER experience that I was gaining, I was like, well, let me just finish residency and I'll probably just take a job in the ER until I can figure out what to do. And that's what I did. We moved to Nashville, and in total, I did ER for 13 years. I ran a department for the last almost 5. But along the way, I tried to develop this entrepreneurial spirit, which I've always known that I've had, but I've never really exercised it outside of a kid, trading baseball cards and, those kinds of things. Having a few bucks in my pocket and flipping cards was always a fun pastime. So I went to my experience and I said, well, what in residency did I find the most joy, and where could I make the most impact, and where are those kind of Venn diagram, where does that kind of overlap? And it was in the obesity space. It was metabolic disease. And so I went on this about an 8-year journey in the fat cell. What is it? Why do we have it? What's the neurohormonal environment? What is obesity? What is metabolic disease? What is metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, obesity, all of these things. And so I went heavy into the obesity space, and I opened up my very first business, which was a medical bariatric practice. And for all intents and purposes, we were very successful. We had at one time 4 different locations. But I was losing steam. My experience was it was very hard for me to gain a lot of traction in the weight loss space, because I'm constantly competing with, lose 40 pounds in 40 days for $40. And even though everybody knows it's food, that's not the path, you're always competing against it. And the fatigue started mounting for me. The real blessing in all that was, along the way, I met a gentleman who at the time was kind of culturally a big deal, but I was so head down. I didn't watch the news. I was kind of ignorant to who he was. And he said something that really changed the trajectory of my professional career. He said, Aaron, we really love you as our doctor. And we'd love to make you our official doctor. And I'm like, but I am your doctor. He's like, no, you're my fat doctor, but I'd really like you to be our concierge doctor. We think you'd be really good at it. And I said, what's concierge? What's a concierge doctor? And he proceeded to tell me that when he lived in Washington, DC, he had this experience with their internist who changed her model. And it was revolutionary for them as a family. And since they'd lived in Nashville for 10 years, they'd been looking for it and they couldn't find it. And I said, well, that's really interesting. I'll look into it. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I didn't think it was real, that something this wonderful was real. I went on about a 2-year journey of like, can I do it? Is it going to work? Am I the right person? All the limiting beliefs that every young entrepreneur has to overcome before they fully let go of the vine. And so while working in the ER and building and ultimately shutting down the bariatric practice, we took a 6-month hiatus. I kept my core team member, and we converted the practice and launched with his family as our first family. And we've been building slowly ever since, and one by one, So it's a very long, short answer, but that's how I got into where I am.
I love this idea of like a first family, right? I mean, I think, a lot of people might make that transition. They already have like a busy practice or a panel or something, right? And they kind of try to move as many people over as they can. But that's an interesting way to start. It's cool,
turns out, 8 years into this, there's only 2 ways to build a practice like I have. And one is you start with 0 and you build, or you have an existing something and you convert it, and day one you have some critical mass already. And those are really the only two paths to creating something like this. And they both have their pros and cons, but going from scratch is certainly it's a steeper incline in terms of learning curve and pucker factor, as I would say. As an ER guy, the pucker when it's serious, when you're really.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Why don't you talk a little bit more about the pucker factor, right? I mean, it's so it sounds. I just want to make sure I understood you, Greg. So you were kind of introduced to this concept by this individual who was participating in your bariatric clinic, and then he ended up asking you to be his concierge doctor, and then it took you 2 years to kind of study it out before you were even ready to say, okay, this is what I would like to do. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, I continued as his bariatric physician, but I was deep into the consideration and pondering and, discussing with my wife. She was very supportive. And from the moment I pitched her on the idea, shortly after it was presented to me, she's like, Aaron, this is if that's real,
what are you waiting for?
That is straight from heaven, right? It was created for your personality. It was this is, it's not my decision, but I'd fully support you. So I had her support. It was really Aaron getting through Aaron, and trying to really kind of march that out. So I, about 2 years later, I called him up and I said, hey, can you meet for coffee? And we did. And I said, hey, this is not a sales pitch in disguise, I promise. But I've been thinking a lot since that day you shared about your concierge experience. And I've made the decision that I'm going to do that. And we went back and forth a little bit. And I just said, I'm not sure if it's still something you're interested in, or it makes sense for you and your family. But if you would have me, I would love for you and your family to be my first members. And I just want to leave that, no pressure, but I couldn't launch this without, you were the gateway drug. So thank you for presenting this as an option. I'm going to do it. It'd be awesome if it still makes sense for you. And sure enough, and boy, I tell you, he goes, yeah, why don't you tell me how it all will work, the fees and all that kind of stuff. And then, I'll talk to my wife and we'll let you know. And I'm like, cool. And I remember leaving the coffee shop. I was like, yes, this is so great. It's so great. And then that night I got home. I'm like, oh my God, I got to text him and give him a number. And that number's really big. And I was so nervous. I had that because it was for the whole family. And I'm like, every insecurity and I had not proven to anyone, including myself, that this was actually going to work.
And had you worked that number out already, or you had kind of some ideas, but now you're like, okay, now the rubber's meeting the road. I really got to make sure this is what I want.
Well, I had worked out roughly how I thought I would price it, but then immediately it's blown up because it's 8 all at one time. This is the OG. He's the founding member. Does that still hold water? Does it make sense? How do I frame it? And I labored over that singular text for hours.
I bet. Yeah. And
then I sent it and I thought my heart stopped. I was sweating. And 2 hours later, his response was, seems reasonable. When do we start? I was so mortified. I mean, it was thousands of dollars a month. And I was just I don't know if this is and if this doesn't work, does that mean all of this,
Yeah. Do you
go
near
a very
right
high climax moment very early in the journey. But it was really important because, from his family, it allowed me to keep my critical number 2, my nurse. I get to keep her. And during the transition, while I could work in the ER and offset the other costs, but at least we had somebody, we were real. Then I had to prove somebody not named him wanted this service. And so like getting number 2 was the next milestone. But we intentionally took about 6 months, and we used that 6 months and that revenue to keep her on staff and then transition the practice. And that cash flowed everything else. But I was highly motivated. You know, I had compelling reasons. I knew that this was something, if I could pull it off, it'd be something that I could be really, really proud of, and it had some legs. Whereas, you know, if it failed and I tried, okay, well, I'm an ER doc and I run a department. Like, my life is not that bad, but I can't live with myself if I didn't, you know, take my shot. And I felt like I owed it to myself to take that shot. And thankfully he said yes, because it gave me incrementally more courage to keep going. You know, but it's scary in the beginning.
I have a question. You know, having kind of taken a similar journey, not exactly, but, you know, having left traditional medicine and gone into more of a, you know, a cash-based, you know, situation, the term concierge comes up a lot. And I think I'd be curious to know what your version of that was when you launched, and if it's evolved. And then maybe, you know, think about how that might compare to other, what I would call membership models, you know, which range from, you know, direct primary care all the way up to more of maybe a high-end concierge. I don't know if that's even the term you would describe yourself as, but.
Full transparency, I hate the term.
Well, that's why I wondered. Yeah.
I never have liked it, but it's what the market has decided is the term. Like, I didn't decide that was the term. And, you know, the market is the market is the market. And so recognizing that, I use the language so that people know who I am and what we do, so that there's a minimal amount of confusion in my quick high level, like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a concierge doc. Oh, okay. As opposed to like going into this deep like explanation. However, what one might notice is nowhere in our branding does it say concierge medicine. And that was very intentional from day one. We're not Brentwood MD concierge medicine. We're not Dr. Wenzel concierge practice. We're Brentwood MD private physicians. Really what we are, we're private physicians. And for us, the model we've chosen is to be totally decoupled from any type of institution, academic center, or insurance provider. We're beholden only to our members. Membership-based medicine, I had not heard that term when I launched. I do like it. It does feel more accurate.
Yeah.
You know, concierge has this kind of like ding ding, like, you know. Oh, concierge, you know, and like a medical valet. That is not what we are. But again, so I resonate with the question, and I'm very, very empathetic to it, because it isn't a great term. Yeah. But again, you go to any city in the United States, or actually I have friends in London, friends in Amsterdam, friends in, like, it's concierge medicine. That's kind of what people call it.
Yeah.
I don't have I don't get a vote. And so this is the market I want to play in. And so I guess it's up to me to redefine what that might mean. And to your point, it means a lot of things, right? Because
right. I mean, you're saying, yes, the market has chosen this term, but it's not crystal clear, and it's not the same in, you know, for everybody. So yeah, I think it is interesting to hear how you sort of, and again, you don't have to define concierge necessarily. I'm interested in more, what was your model? Like, what was your version of it? You know, so that I think so people can understand what that was, what you were thinking, and, you know, how you framed it.
Initially, it was about, I just wanted to be beholden to my members. And then I wanted to create an environment where the doctor-patient relationship was sacred and was a bedrock, was a component of the bedrock. And that there weren't any other stakeholders in that relationship. And that was my North Star in the beginning, that the doctor-patient relationship were the only two stakeholders.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
I felt instinctively that gave me the best probability of a path of doing medicine a way that was fulfilling, deeply fulfilling, and high probability where the members would feel heard, important, and that they would have some sort of reciprocal experience where this relationship is useful, and that everything else would kind of just fall in order. And it really has panned out. It's still in our language all through our website. It is the language we use, that we just believe that doctor-patient relationship should only have two stakeholders, and that any relationship where there are more than two, it's not bad. It's just, it gets more complicated. You, by definition, will have to pander to somebody outside of that sacredness. And there will be times where it's okay and it doesn't cause a lot of friction. There will be some times when it stands square in the face of what you want to do because they're the check writers. But, so for us, that was really important. And I think when I counsel and speak with a lot of docs who are thinking about doing this, and they have all of these ideas about what they should do in the rank and order of what they should do, yet they have no clarity on whether they're going to take insurance or not. And I say, hey, real quick, you're building a really beautiful wagon and it's really great, but you do not have a horse. In my experience, the most important thing in the beginning to get very clear on is how many stakeholders will there be? And that will largely dictate subsequent decisions. And again, I'm not saying they're good or bad, but for that individual physician entrepreneur or that group of physician entrepreneurs, I think the most essential question to answer first is, who's paying the bill? How many stakeholders are there? And if we're going to allow a third stakeholder being private insurance, well, then which of the private insurance? Because each one of them is a different stakeholder. And then are we doing Medicare or not? And then and it's a complicated first question to ask, which is why I think when people land on it instinctively, they're like, oh, this is really important, but it's hard. I'll answer that later. It's very seductive. I would argue it's kind of like going to the gym. It's hard. It gets easy later. And when you enjoy going to the gym, that's a late finding. In the beginning, it's hard. You feel weak. It's painful. You don't have the discipline yet. You're not reaping the benefits yet. I have just found people who can get really clear on their model, whether they choose insurance or not, if they're really clear on what they're going to do and why they chose that path, there's a lot less regret in 5, 7, 8 years, which then becomes really, 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 really hard to unwind and change later. And then I think the next model is so the first big differentiator is whether you take insurance or not. The next one is, where's your entry point? There's a pool of somewhere between 50 and a few $100 a month. There's a pool in the $1,000 to $5,000 a month. There's a pool of $7,000 to $10,000, and then there's a handful who will charge $20, $30, $100. And what I have found is all the math is the same. The revenue per physician is the same for the practice.
Yeah.
It just depends on how, and it's deeply personal. How many people do you want to take care of? How busy do you want to be? And I think you reverse engineer the math, and that's how you determine your price point. Oh, I want 600 patients. Oh, okay, cool. Well, then I could probably come in at around $2,500 a year. I only want 200. Well, it's probably about 10 grand, 7 to 10 grand. Well, I only want 50. Well, it's probably going to be 40. But the math comes out about the same in terms of revenues. It just matters which market you want to serve. And so what I would say is the second most important thing is, what market do you want to serve? And do you have an instinct or a bend or a preference? I knew that I didn't want more than 200 members, just personally. And building a bad business or building a good business is really hard. I had a mentor. He goes, you might as well just build your dream business, because building a horrible business is just as hard. You don't want to do the hard thing and build the thing and it's successful and then you hate it. Which was really meaningful to me. And so we started from day one by default a higher end product because I didn't want insurance and I only wanted 200 members, and that dictated the math. I have friends. I have a friend in Denver. She sees 600 members. She charges a third of what I do. I was like, huh, that's funny. The math is the same. And then I have friends that only see 100 and they're 20K a year. I'm like, oh. And just observationally, I haven't done any studies, but it does seem to me viable, successful medical practices outside of insurance is, $1.8 to $2 million a year of top line revenue per practicing full-time physician seems to be about the magic number to make it viable and scalable. It just depends on how you want to get there.
That's great. That's great information. I think it's fascinating too that you had already made this decision, right? Like your framework, who your stakeholders were, and yet it has allowed you maybe a different level of insight into even the models where people choose other stakeholders, right? So
yes,
I mean, it's weird because you would think, well, how does he know that? But I get from the clarity of the way you described it that understanding allows you to sort of transfer this framework over to these other models, which I think is beautiful. Even in a situation, I used to work for one of the largest nonprofit health systems in the country. And even in that model, I think it would help their relationship with their doctors if they presented it more authentically, right? Instead of saying, oh, we're going to give you as much autonomy as you want. Really? Well, we're going to give you as much autonomy as these 20 stakeholders will allow you, right? It's a different discussion,
Which is not much autonomy.
Exactly. Choose where you go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine being married to 20 wives and and having this ambition and audacity to believe that you will make them each feel individually independent and loved and special and unique? That ain't gonna work. I mean, you might do it and it might still be worth it for you, but like that's deluded thinking to think that the result will be anything other than what it can be.
Yeah. 20 different sets of KPIs.
Yeah. That would be an interesting discussion. and where do you keep that list of the 20 different KPIs? Because there would be some overlap. I have an amazing wife and I'm grateful for her, but I wouldn't want to. And I'm sure she wouldn't want two husbands. I'm a lot to keep track of, but what I was going to say is even in the models that are kind of the hybrid model, and I have some friends that are in this model and I don't know their books, but we do talk. And when I do simple math based on my thesis of about 2 million per doctor, it still holds water. It's whatever $2,000 a year for an MD VIP, plus they bill Medicare. So at 600, because they cap and they publicly, what's the math? 1.2. So they got to do 800K a year of billables. Yeah. With 600 people. Oh, okay. Well, each have an annual physical, and I bet if we got into their books, it'd be about 2 million. And the negative is if you're the physician entrepreneur who's building that, you're on a fixed salary, and you do the math, and you're saying, "Oh my God, I'm only getting a fraction." The good news is it's easy because they fill the books. It's like it's such a low price point. You're immediate within a year, you're full, and so it's not as hard. But so there's give and take. There's benefits of a more complex, inclusive model, but it has a limited upside. And to me, equity and upside is completely correlated with risk. How much risk are you taking? And the more risk you take, if done right, you should have a bigger upside. But if you're not taking a bunch of risk other than changing jobs, that's not very risky. You shouldn't be entitled to the bigger upside. The company's taking the risk hiring you. Whereas my world was like, well, uh, it's just me and no paying members. So like it was all on the Wenzel household to figure that out. And I'm grateful for it. I wouldn't change it in the world for the world. You know, I feel like it's been incredible experience. I just feel really blessed to be able to do medicine the way that I do with the people that I get to do it with, my team, and the way that we, it's rare. It's rare, and it feels very, very special. And we get feedback from our members that it is just as special to them, which feels kind of holistically and comprehensively beautiful. In a world where the doctor-patient healthcare, sick care system, there's so much friction. Like, I don't know that there are a ton of people who are like, oh my gosh, I love my doctor. I love my practice. The practice is so great. I feel heard. I feel appreciated. Like, they've got me. They think about me. They're so thoughtful. I mean, I don't think that's very common.
No, it's not. And I think it goes back to your point of, who are the stakeholders, right? And are both stakeholders investing in what's happening and getting the return that they want, right? And if both stakeholders are happy with that, then the business is going to flourish. So I think I really like that mindset. Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about that transition? So you now you have your first patient, you wait another 6 months before you're bringing another patient on. You're still working in the emergency room. How did that transition take place? How long did it take before you were like, okay, now I can get rid of the ER job and just do my concierge job? And were there any hiccups along the way where you're like, wait, did I make the right decision? I've now opened this can of worms. Did I make the right decision?
Yeah. So what I will say is there were countless mistakes, but I'm reflecting, and I can't think of a single moment where I wondered if I did the right thing. I had a tremendous confidence and conviction, like deeper than I felt a conviction that this was the right play, and it just needed enough runway, and it was special enough to take time. And everything that was the most precious to me, my health, my relationships, all were not fast things. I had a low time preference for this. I was not in a rush. I did not prioritize time urgency. I prioritized curiosity and excellence, and just staying open to what that might look like, because I didn't have a playbook. I was running a department, so I was in control of my schedule. And I kind of went into it with more of I'm going to be curious with how the market responds to our presence. So the early days were really just being present, having a beautiful website that was as clear as I could in the version that I understood it to be. I understood basic concept of search, and although I don't know how to market to people about a service like this, I can make myself findable to the people who are searching for this. And I think in phase one for me was truly just my best odds, because I just come off this other business adventure where I was, it was very cash heavy in there. I had learned a lot about marketing. I moderately good at storytelling and marketing and creating content at the time, but I also understood return on ad spend, and I understood about cash flow. And I wasn't looking to burn a bunch of cash. I wanted to do this really efficiently and elegantly. And so my early days were a beautiful website with well-constructed words that explained who we are, who we're for, why life would be different with us, and what I'd like you to do if you think we'd be a good fit. That was the basic premise of phase one. And I just had this feeling that if I just take care of the people who inquire, that'll be good enough for a period of time. And again, having low time preference, I didn't have a board. I'm a 100% owner. So And I wasn't using it to pay my bills. So I had this really interesting sweet spot where an investor would have never allowed this. Another business partner who had different time horizons and time preferences probably couldn't allow this incubator kind of period of time. And we got our first 20 or 30, probably in the first year. Very slow. I'd have to look at the math, but I would say 24 or 25 of those first 30, they're part of my OG early folks who've stayed with me.
Aaron, let me interject real quick. I'm curious, of those individuals that kind of joined you, were you particularly in that first 6 months when you just had one family, were you gathering kind of names? Were you talking to people about what you were doing and just saying, hey, I'll let you know, I'll get back? And did you have people come in and say, yeah, I'm interested, let me see, I'll get back to you? I mean, how did that go? Were you advocating for your practice and talking to people about it, or were they all coming to you off of your marketing?
Yeah, I mean, as a reminder, I was working my face off. You know, I was working nights and weekends to be available Monday through Friday during the day. I advocated about my practice and what I was up to, and everybody in my team knew what I did. But like, my audience were ER patients in a small town far away. So like, that was not a good use of my energy.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, we went to, like, we had some social life, but it was basically like maybe once every 2 months we went on date night, but I was with my wife. I wasn't like, she grew weary, and anybody who's married, who has a spouse who's not an entrepreneur, they grow weary of talking business. And so I learned very quickly that our once a month or once every 2 months or once a quarter date night, I would be foolish to bring up business unless she brought it up. And so, yeah, there weren't a lot of opportunities to like talk about it. So whether by intention or just the way it was, I don't really know. But my recollection is I wanted to be findable, to see if the people who knew they wanted concierge medicine and could find me thought we would be a good fit. And that was enough to get 25 or 30. Now, I don't want to, although that's not totally just throwing noodles on the wall, hoping they stick. I mean, I had a good sense of copywriting. I had a good sense of like website architecture. I had a good sense of value proposition and benefit-driven language and all of these things. I had learned a lot. So it wasn't just like I spent 3 hours building a Squarespace website and just hoped. No, I mean, we were building SEO. We were really, really, and the money I was spending, I was working with a team to help me create content. So, but it wasn't fancy. It was literally like this exact phone and a tripod and like me at a whiteboard, just trying to be useful. Then I would take the transcription of that and then edit it for a blog post. I was just trying to, either got time or money, and I didn't have either. So I just did the best I could with the budget and the time that I had. But eventually, you know, we hit some milestones where Jen, my number two, she was paying for herself, and then we were covering our cost. And then I'll never forget the first really significant milestone after that first family was Jen looking at me and saying, I didn't take a paycheck for like 3 years. I continued to build and reinvest and build. And she looked at me, and she was handling all the books. She was doing everything. I was doing all the doctoring, all the marketing, all the sales calls. I was doing all that. She would do all the patient care when I was in the ER. She was a friggin' rock star. She goes, Aaron, you're paying yourself this month. This is the first month. And I go, I don't know. Are we ready for all that? And I wrote myself a $20,000 check. And it was like a weep session, you know. But that was a real big milestone for us, where finally the thing that I built was giving back to me. And then that became a month. That was like my pay. I paid myself $20,000 a month. And we didn't break, which was like important for a young, like I was growing in my confidence of what we had built as like a young father, maybe like, oh, wow, you can like go in the store by yourself. Like, it's kind of one of those things, like, I guess you could do that again. And then they demonstrate that they're able to do that, and you can take my card, and you're like, wow, you're 15. I guess you are supposed to be able to do that. But it's in real time, it's a little weird, to walk that out. And then eventually, there was enough to where I was double dipping. I was making from the ER as a directorship. I was matching that with the practice, because I kept giving myself pay raises because I was proving mathematically that it was possible. And for like 3 seconds, I had this idea, I'll just get so ahead, I didn't really want to let go of the vine completely. As most entrepreneurs who spin something up, it's hard to, when the side hustle becomes the main thing, getting rid of the main thing that used to be the main thing that now is kind of like your old blankie that you need to get rid of. Thankfully, I was able to do that, but mostly because I was so stinking tired. Like, I had gotten really unhealthy, chronically sleep deprived. I developed metabolic syndrome. I call him Fat Aaron. I needed to be there for my kids. I needed to be there for me. I needed to be there for my wife. They had been incredibly supportive. And so April 27th, 2021 was my last ER shift. And I burned the boats, and I never looked back. Within 6 months, I was totally full and hiring my second doc. Turns out things you focus on exclusively grow. So when I made my core business the main thing, it grew much faster than this kind of passive, let's just see how it goes. Because I was all in. It's all I did. I fired my fat self, started getting in shape, reconnecting with my wife, reconnecting spiritually, reconnecting with other things that were really, really important to me that I had, put on the back burner for self-preservation and kind of things that people do when you're just trying to build. And then so we hired our second doc. He started in, he started the following, about a year later. So I actually overshot my 200 on purpose to create the cash flow to pay for the next doc's guaranteed salary. So that's how I ended up. So I went to like 245, and those extra members created pre-baked margin for his guarantee. And then over time, those 245 have dwindled, and I just don't replace them, because it's very important that I stay high integrity with that. So temporarily, intentionally, and strategically overshot. And that was really glad we did, because I don't know about y'all, but in business, if I don't have cash confidence, I decompensate. Like, I got to look at the math and have confidence that the cash flow is good. Otherwise, I'm not the best version of myself. And so I just know that about myself, that I over-index with cash confidence. I need to know the money's good. And so that was important, and it was very smooth. It took him about 3 years to get full, where it took me, about 5.5, which is what you would expect. And in hindsight, it makes sense, but we hadn't proven that. I hadn't proven that anybody could do this other than me. But then I proved that another guy could do it that wasn't named me. And then this last July, we hired our third doc, and he's off to the races. And we didn't, we've got the cash flow to kind of do that and grow the team. And we're in a really, really good place. And I think that it's kind of the old, make a lot of mistakes, make them fast, and then iterate. And we've made tons of mistakes. I kind of gave you this whole historical thing. I don't think that was what you asked me.
No, I think that's perfect for our audience to, kind of hear what it takes and what you've been through. In the little bit of time we have left, I would be interested to know a little bit more about, what are key aspects of your model. I think that there's people who have membership models, private practices, that focus on slightly different things? Are you trying to be sort of the primary care plus? Is it more of a functional medicine lifestyle practice? Is it a, like integrative? Just give us an idea a little bit about what are some core tenets to your philosophy.
Another really, really good question. And I would agree if your audience is thinking about doing this or is doing it and trying to get some traction. I think it was Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that said the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And turns out it's super hard. And in the beginning, ironically, you have to say yes to lots of things in the beginning to reach a critical mass. But then you have to start saying no to everything that isn't your core business because the inefficiencies don't scale. And I don't know any entrepreneur who starts from scratch who doesn't have some cleanup to do. Also some discovery on what your core business is. It's easy to fall prey to the idea that you want to be all things to all people, but that just means you're nothing to no one. And so when you try to speak to everyone, you actually speak to no one. And we were actually very clear in the beginning. This was one of the valuable lessons from the weight loss space, the obesity, bariatric space. What is our core business? Who do we want to be? And we were very, very clear in the beginning that we wanted to be the best in the world at Concierge Primary Care. That's who we aim to become. And we hold every new opportunity to the test of, does this help us become the best in the world at primary care? Which is why we don't do a bunch of other things. That's why we don't do any other things. And I've left a lot of millions of short-term dollars on the table. It's why we don't do executive physicals. I mean, my market alone could probably be several $1 million. But my goal isn't to be that. What I don't want to build something that will be hard, and then it's confusing. And for people who are looking for best in class primary care, they would look at us and say, "That's not my people." And so I think it makes it harder to grow fast early, but then later it really allows you, when you have that brand established, to grow sustainably and in a meaningful way. So our core business is primary care, and we want to do it in a very, very, very meaningful way. And that where our apex asset is the relationship we have with our members, and we everything is from that like core belief around stakeholders. And so, if we only have the two relationships, then that relationship is the apex. Everything is through the lens of, does this enhance our relationship with our member or not? And that's why we haven't become great at IV therapies. I don't know. But there are companies here who do really great work, and that's their core business. And we will find the best in the world at IV therapy, and we'll send them to them. And that's just how we've positioned, and it's given us a remarkable amount of clarity. And what's been interesting is, in the beginning, it was really, again, more insecurity. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing the right thing. Like, I think we should probably be raising cash flow and like raising revenue. And I'm totally sympathetic to why people feel that way. But what's interesting now at year 8, I'm so grateful. We say no all the time, and it's easy to say no now because it doesn't. Everyone on our team understands that our goal, and we talk about it every quarterly all hands on deck kind of meeting, what our aim is and what our mission and vision is. And there's no confusion on our team why we don't do these one-off transactional things, because it's not a core business. And so I think it's a superpower for early physician entrepreneurs to get really clear. If you want to be an integrative practice, then you should be the best in the world at integrative medicine. The common seduction is that the quickest path to success is to be great at lots of things, and it's false. The clearest, most reliable, sustainable path to success is being the best in the world at one thing. Then once you've established that, you can branch, you need to go deep before wide. Otherwise, you're going to be competing against people. Like in the market here in Nashville, there are lots of new practices that pop up from time to time who on their menu of services have concierge primary care as part of it. Yeah. And you're doing all like, no. And our ideal members, they see that a mile away. You know, so anyway, that's what I would say.
I love that. I've been listening to a book titled The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Pappson. I don't know if you, yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's interesting to hear you kind of reiterate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Love that.
These are known truths from old war-tested business owners and we all are seduced by similar things. And that the path to the mountaintop that we're trying to go to is paved with all of these roads we have to become excellent at, and it's just not true. It's a very expensive. It's a very expensive and ego-driven, burn hot, and then lose people and not know why. But the stickiness is when you're like, oh, I got a guy. So when your members are out talking about the impact that joining an integrative practice has had on their life, when they speak about it and evangelize about it, they're like, I got a guy. But it's not because that guy does these 19 things. It's because they had a unique perspective on diet and micronutrients or whatever, or gut health, or like whatever the thing might be. And by the way, we have integrative practices in town that when we're vetting, if they're integrative for all things, it's probably not our person. Like, we're looking for people. If I have somebody who's entrusted me to be their health asset manager and they have gut issues, I'm looking for somebody whose primary core business is gut health. Because these people can write checks, they can travel, they're looking for the best in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I see that pattern showing up. And it's not to say you can't be successful or have a business that's viable. It's just excellence and really, really getting to that level where you become the dominant player in your market. I think almost, I would be surprised to find any examples that don't have a very clear core business. When you go to their website, within 20 seconds, you very clearly understand what their core business is. Yeah. I mean, those are my rants on that.
Well, Aaron, this has been an absolutely fantastic. We might have to have an Aaron Wenzel part 2.
Oh boy.
Because I don't know about Davin, but I still have a list of 4 or 5 questions that I wanted to ask that
let's do it again. This has been fun. I'm a believer in the model that I practice in, and I'm also an abundance guy. So like I talk with friends in my market, outside of my market. Go do you. Your people will find you. I'm not for everyone. But you deserve to find your person. And like, if you're a talented physician and you have the heart to go help people and you have an idea of the way you would like to do it and it's aligned with your values and goals and this is the path to do it, I would encourage people to do it. But be true. But build your dream business. Don't build something that you end up regretting or hating. And it might take you a little more time. It'll almost certainly be more scary. But I don't know. Asking my wife out the first time, I was scared to death. You know, there's something about our species, I believe, that we don't have the ability to fully appreciate that which is not invested in. Like there has to be a risk component. There has to be some stakeholdership. There has to be consequences for getting things wrong for you to fully appreciate when it works. There's some beauty in that for another talk probably, but like I don't know. I see a lot of parallels in my business journey that other things that I was brave in the moment. And in hindsight, it's like, oh, it's easier for you because you're brave. No. I mean, like to be brave implies that I was scared. Otherwise, it wouldn't take bravery.
Yeah.
Yes. Bravery means I'm afraid. For
sure.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. And, the subtitle of our podcast is The First Step is the Hardest. And it really, it is hard but you've got to make it. Otherwise you're stuck where you are forever. Right. And so it's just been so fascinating. I've heard your story before, but there are details that were fleshed out today that I hadn't heard before, but there were just so many wonderful points of just how you frame things and how you boiled things down for clarity in terms of where you had success. And so we really, really appreciate your being with us today and look forward to part 2 sometime down the road.
Just let me know. Thanks, guys. It was a real pleasure.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
See y'all.